When loyalty wasn't enough, my girlfriend's open relationship request and the shocking truth behind it. I remember the first time I met her, the sparkle in her eyes, her captivating smile, and the way she made everything around her light up. For the past 3 years, I loved her with everything I had. We shared countless memories, moments of joy and sorrow, and dreams of a beautiful future together. I truly believed I was lucky to have found a perfect partner. Someone I could trust and pour my whole heart into. But then, strange signs started to appear. She began hinting at the idea of an open relationship, wanting to explore something new for our relationship. At first, I thought it was just a joke or a passing thought that she'd forget. However, as she continued to bring it up, I realized she was serious. She said it could refresh our relationship and make our love life more exciting. Being someone who deeply values loyalty, the idea of an open relationship felt foreign and uncomfortable to me. When I rejected her suggestion outright, she became visibly upset. She said I didn't understand her, that I was too rigid and unwilling to try something new. That conversation was tense, leaving an invisible wall between us that seemed to grow each day. After that, she started to distance herself. She spoke to me less, and even moved to sleep in the guest room. We lived in silence, both of us avoiding any attempt to break down the wall that had formed. I tried to talk to her, to understand why she felt dissatisfied with our relationship, but she only responded coldly, saying it was no longer important. My close friends suggested that she might be hiding something, perhaps even seeing someone else. At first, I didn't want to believe it, because to me, she was still the woman I loved and trusted. But as doubts crept into my mind, I started questioning if I had been too naive to trust her completely. Finally, in a moment of tense confrontation, I directly asked her about my suspicions. I needed the truth, even if it was the most painful thing to hear. She was silent for a long moment, and then, with a defiant look, she admitted to betraying me. Not only that, but she revealed that she was pregnant, with a man she called just a friend. In that moment, I felt as if my whole world had collapsed beneath me. Every memory of love and trust I had for her turned to ashes. Everything I thought was eternal was just an illusion. I couldn't believe that the woman I had given my whole heart to could hurt me so profoundly. After calming down, I realized I couldn't continue living in this state of betrayal and pain. I told her I would leave, and from that moment on, I knew I had to start over. I moved out, found a new place to stay, and began trying to rebuild my life from the shattered pieces she left behind. Each day, I faced loneliness and loss. Many sleepless nights were spent questioning where I went wrong, blaming myself for not seeing her changes earlier. I realized that I had sacrificed too much for this relationship, to the point of losing myself. Over time, I began to find strength from friends. From the stories they shared about their own heartbreaks, they recounted moments of betrayal, pains they thought were insurmountable, but they had risen, learned to love themselves again, and found peace within. In the end, I understood that life is a journey of learning and growth. Though betrayal is painful, it taught me the value of self-respect and loyalty. I realized I deserve a love that is genuine, someone who truly values me. Now, I have started a new life, with the belief that all wounds eventually heal. Every day, I am learning to love myself more, preparing for a brighter future, a future where I will never allow anyone to hurt me like that again. When crisis reveals true colors, a heart-stopping decision that changed everything. I never expected a sunny afternoon in my own backyard to be the setting for a life-altering realization. If you'd asked me a week before, I'd have confidently described my husband as a reliable, level-headed man, a person I believed would stand by me through any storm. But that was before a wild dog showed up, uninvited and relentless, shifting the ground under everything I thought I knew about him. The day started like any other. We'd agreed to babysit his niece and nephew, a favor I accepted with a mixture of reluctance and resolve. Not because I disliked them, but because I'd always pictured a different life for myself. Child-free, I'd remind him with a playful smirk whenever he'd hint about family plans. He respected it, though, and we'd made peace with our life as a two-person household. But his sister needed us that weekend, so we welcomed the little ones into our world, if only for a short time. As the afternoon wore on, the kids giggled and explored, and I let myself feel, for just a moment, the sweetness of their innocence. I'd been keeping a close eye, of course, Children bring a new layer of responsibility. We were laughing over something silly when I caught a movement at the edge of the yard. Out of nowhere, a pit bull charged toward us. A knot of terror seized me as I saw the sheer power and aggression in its eyes. And that's when everything slowed down. A surreal moment suspended in terror. Instinct took over. I barely registered my husband's shouts as I focused on the children. In one motion, I swept his niece into my arms, looking frantically for a place to keep her safe. "Get the bear spray," I yelled, desperate for something to fend off this sudden threat. He was only a few feet away, and I assumed he'd jump into action. After all, that's what you do when your family is in danger, right? But as I kicked the dog, trying to keep it away from us, I saw him turn, running in the opposite direction. Not toward the bear spray or to help, but toward the open gate. I couldn't believe it. My mind screamed at him to come back, to help, but he just disappeared beyond the fence. There was no time to process the betrayal. Survival was all that mattered. In the moments that followed, I fought with every ounce of strength I had. Somehow, I managed to land a hard kick that made the dog retreat just long enough to grab a nearby shovel. My hands shook as I swung it, my vision blurred by a blend of terror and determination. I was protecting his niece, his family, with no one by my side, least of all the one person who should have been there. When the ordeal was over and the silence settled, I noticed my wounds, deep bites on my arms that I hadn't even felt in the chaos. The children were shaken but safe, and I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Only then did my husband reappear, his face pale, and his words empty. "Are you all right?" he asked. But the question cut deeper than the bites. Was he asking out of genuine concern? Or was he trying to erase his absence from the memory? The days that followed were filled with tension and unanswered questions. I avoided looking at him, speaking to him, even sharing the same room. My mind was filled with the haunting thought, what kind of person abandons you in your darkest hour? And as much as I tried to rationalize his flight, the gnawing sense of betrayal stayed, growing deeper with each passing day. The days after the attack were a blur of silent tension. I could feel the weight of unspoken words pressing down on us every time we crossed paths. Each step around the house felt like stepping on glass. I avoided looking at him, and he seemed to avoid saying anything beyond the essentials. Our once comfortable home had become a battlefield of unvoiced accusations and unresolved fears. Sleep became elusive, each night bringing a wave of restless thoughts and memories of the attack replaying in my mind. I kept asking myself, was it just instinct that made him run? Or was it something deeper? A crack in the foundation of who he truly is? I'd seen fear before, but this was abandonment. A choice he made to protect himself over the people he claimed to love. And the worst part? I didn't know if I could forgive him for it. One evening, after another sleepless night, I found myself going through old photos. There he was, smiling at me from countless memories, a husband I thought I knew so well. Our vacations, family gatherings, silly moments around the house. Each image was a reminder of the man I'd married. The man who was supposed to be my rock. Yet, here we were, fractured by a single moment when he had chosen to flee instead of stand by me. I decided to open up to a close friend, someone who had been with me through thick and thin. She listened, her face a mixture of shock and concern. "Maybe he just panicked," she offered, trying to bring reason into my swirling thoughts. People react in different ways during a crisis. Fight or flight, remember? But isn't love supposed to transcend that? I replied, almost pleading. In that moment, it wasn't about me being strong. I needed him, and he ran. My voice trembled, as if admitting it out loud made it more real. The conversation stuck with me, echoing in my mind long after I returned home. What if she was right? What if this was just his instinct? Something beyond his control? Yet, I couldn't shake the image of him disappearing through the gate. His back turned on the chaos. On me. How was I supposed to trust him again? The rift between us grew deeper with each passing day. He tried to talk, to make small gestures, offering to cook dinner, asking if I needed anything from the store. But each attempt felt hollow, like he was trying to patch a wound that needed far more than casual fixes. One evening, he finally confronted me, his voice tinged with frustration. "Are you just going to ignore me forever? It's like you're punishing me for something I couldn't control." I looked at him, and the words spilled out before I could stop them. "You couldn't control it? You chose to run, to leave me and the kids behind. How am I supposed to feel safe with you after that? He opened his mouth to respond but seemed to falter, his gaze dropping to the floor. I was scared. He whispered. I didn't know what to do. I just reacted. And what about us? I challenged. What about your family? Did we not even cross your mind? My voice broke, anger and hurt intertwining. The days turned into weeks. And slowly, a sense of clarity began to form. I realized that my hurt wasn't just about that one moment. It was about trust, about realizing that the man I depended on could make a choice so contradictory to the love we'd built together. I thought of other moments in our lives, our camping trips. Those times we'd tackled challenges together. I used to see him as my equal, my partner, but now, all I could feel was a chasm, one I wasn't sure we could bridge. Eventually, his sister reached out, grateful for what I had done to protect her children. She offered kind words and support, understanding my struggle, while also acknowledging her own anger at her brother's actions. He's always been a bit flighty, she admitted one day over coffee. But I never thought he'd abandon you like that. Her words were comforting yet bitter, a reminder that even those close to him could see the flaw in his character. As the weeks passed, I began to reflect on the life I wanted, the type of partner I needed. I wanted someone who would stand beside me, who would be willing to fight, even in moments of fear. I didn't expect perfection, but I needed a kind of resilience, a shared strength that this incident had shown me was missing. In the quiet of our home, I found myself alone with my thoughts, weighing everything that had happened. Each day felt like a slow march toward a decision I'd been resisting, clinging to a sliver of hope that things might magically return to how they once were. But deep down, I knew the truth. That single moment of terror had shown me a side of my husband I couldn't unsee, a side that didn't fit into the vision of a shared life built on trust and mutual protection. I decided to seek professional counseling, hoping that maybe an outsider's perspective could shed light on how I felt. I didn't go in looking to fix my marriage. Exactly. I went to understand why the hurt ran so deep and why the incident haunted me in ways that went beyond fear or anger. After a few sessions, I began to understand. It wasn't just the betrayal during the attack. It was what that moment revealed about our relationship, a crack in the foundation that no amount of apology or reasoning could mend. One afternoon, after a particularly intense therapy session, I came home and found him waiting for me. His eyes looked heavy, shadowed with guilt and frustration. Can we talk? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, feeling a strange calm settle over me. This wasn't a conversation I wanted, but it was one I needed to have. He started by apologizing again, his words tumbling over one another as he tried to explain his fear. His regret. I didn't mean to leave you, he said, looking at me with eyes that sought forgiveness. I panicked. I've never been in a situation like that before. I didn't know what to do. I understand fear, I replied softly, but love is supposed to make you stronger, not send you running when things get tough. I fought for those kids because that's what love does. It steps up, it protects. I paused, my heart heavy with the weight of the words I was about to say. And in that moment, you weren't there. You chose yourself over us. The silence that followed was painful, a chasm neither of us seemed able to cross. Finally, I took a deep breath, steadying myself for what I knew was the right choice. I think we need time apart, I said. Maybe this marriage isn't what we both need. He looked stricken, but he didn't argue. Perhaps he understood that some things, once broken, could never truly be repaired. I felt a strange sense of peace wash over me, a bittersweet relief in knowing that I was letting go of something that no longer served either of us. In the days that followed, I packed my things and prepared to start a new chapter on my own. I kept in touch with his sister and her family, grateful for their support and their understanding of the difficult choice I'd made. I still carried the scars from that day, both physical and emotional, but I also carried a newfound strength, a reminder of my own resilience. As I settled into my new life, I found comfort in the lessons the experience had taught me. I'd learned that love is not just about shared memories and promises, it's about action and commitment. Especially in the hardest moments. True love stands by you, fights with you, and doesn't flee at the first sign of danger. And while I hadn't found that with him, I knew it was something I'd find someday. Perhaps when I least expected it. In the end, I was proud of myself for choosing my own peace and strength over a relationship that no longer felt safe. The attack had shown me my husband's true colors. But it had also shown me my own. I was a fighter. A protector. And I deserved someone who would be the same for me. The shocking truth that shattered my family when betrayal comes from those closest to us. It's strange how life can feel perfectly normal one moment, then turn into something unrecognizable the next. I used to believe I had it all, a loving fiancé, a close-knit family, and a little brother I adored. I thought I was living the life I'd always dreamed of, a life filled with love, trust, and security. But one moment changed everything, and I was forced to question everything I believed in and everyone I loved. From the outside, people would say I was lucky. I met my fiancé, Ethan, when I was 17. He was a year older, a senior when I was just a junior in high school. He was everything I could have hoped for, kind, funny, and loyal. He made me feel special in a way no one else ever had. He was handsome, too, the kind of guy who could make you feel safe just by holding your hand. Everyone said I was lucky to have him, and I believed it with all my heart. And my mom, she was my rock, my best friend, the one person I thought I could trust unconditionally. My dad passed away when I was just a kid, so it had always been just me and her against the world. We were close, really close. People used to joke that we were like the real-life version of Rory and Lorelai from Gilmore Girls, and in some ways, we were. She wasn't just my mom, she was my confidant, my role model, my everything. She dated a few guys over the years, but none of them ever stuck around for long. I think she was too afraid of losing our bond to let anyone else get close to her heart. When she told me she was pregnant 4 years ago, I was shocked. I remember that conversation so clearly, it's like it's burned into my memory. She looked nervous, almost embarrassed, and I could see the worry in her eyes. I didn't think I could get pregnant at my age, she said, almost apologetically. She was 42 at the time, and although she had been seeing someone, I didn't know much about him. She never introduced him to me, which was unusual, but I didn't question it. I was too busy supporting her, trying to reassure her that everything would be okay. She had always been there for me, and now it was my turn to be there for her. When my little brother was born, I fell in love with him instantly. He was this tiny, precious bundle of joy, and I wanted nothing more than to protect him, to be the best big sister I could be. Ethan loved him too. We would take him out for ice cream, bring him to the playground, and spend lazy afternoons at the pool during the summer. Ethan seemed to adore him just as much as I did, and I was so grateful to have a partner who embraced my family with such open arms. But things began to unravel one night when I was alone at home. Ethan was out with friends, and I was curled up on the couch, watching Netflix. My laptop died, and I was too lazy to get up and grab the charger. So I reached for Ethan's iPad instead. I knew the password. We had always been open with each other. Or so I thought. But as soon as the screen unlocked, a flood of notifications popped up. He hadn't used the iPad in a while, and it seemed like the messages had accumulated, just waiting for me to see them. One message, in particular, caught my eye. It was from a number I recognized instantly, my mom's. But the name saved in the contacts wasn't Mom, which struck me as odd. Curiosity got the better of me, and before I could stop myself, I clicked on the conversation. What I found shattered my heart into 1,000 pieces. The messages revealed a horrifying truth. Ethan and my mom had been having an affair for years. And my little brother wasn't just my brother. He was Ethan's son. I read the words over and over, hoping that somehow I was misunderstanding, that there was some other explanation. But the truth was undeniable. My mother's messages spoke of guilt and regret, of the pain they felt keeping this secret from me. She had even asked him if he could live with being in his son's life without acting like his father. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at the screen, frozen in shock and disbelief. My mind raced with 1,000 thoughts, each one more painful than the last. I had trusted these two people more than anyone else in the world, and they had both betrayed me in the most unimaginable way. I felt like my whole life had been a lie. When Ethan came home that night, I couldn't hold back. I handed him the iPad with the messages open, my hands shaking with anger and heartbreak. He looked at the screen, and I watched as his face went pale. He didn't try to deny it. He knew he'd been caught. I demanded an explanation, some reason that could make sense of the nightmare I was living. But there was no good reason, only excuses. He claimed it started when I was away on a trip, that they had shared a few dinners, and one thing led to another. He said they tried to stop, but the damage had already been done. I remember screaming at him. The sound raw and guttural, filled with years of love and trust ripped to shreds. I told him it was over, that I never wanted to see him or my mother again. But as much as I tried to sever ties, the pain lingered, gnawing at me every day. I had loved my little brother, and now he was a painful reminder of the betrayal that had shattered my life. My friends tried to be there for me, but I felt like no one could understand the depth of my pain. I'd lost not only my fiancée but also my mother and, in a way, my little brother. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of anger and sadness. Unable to break free, the betrayal had robbed me of everything I held dear, and I didn't know how to move on. Ethan tried to reach out to me, apologizing profusely and begging for another chance. He said he would go to therapy, that he wanted to be a father to his son, that he would do anything to make things right. But there was no going back. The trust that once bound us was gone, replaced by a gaping wound that would never fully heal. In the end, I realized I had to let go of the anger, not for them but for myself. Holding onto the pain was only hurting me more. I decided to move to a new city, to start fresh and rebuild my life. It wasn't easy, and there were days when the memories would come rushing back, threatening to pull me under. But with time, I learned to let go, to find peace within myself. This experience taught me more about love, trust, and resilience than I ever wanted to know. I learned that sometimes the people we love the most are the ones who can hurt us the deepest. And that's a risk we all take when we open our hearts. But I also learned that I am stronger than I ever knew. I survived the unimaginable, and now I'm ready to move forward, to build a life on my terms, free from the shadows of betrayal.